Coming up next on Long Island Backstory, attorney Mace Greenfield. This is an attorney who's been there, done that. Went for 2 divorces, got custody of his daughter, and now has been practicing for 16 years. And today, Mace is going to tell us in 16 years, what has he learned? So, Mace, for your 16th anniversary, 16 years practicing law, you published an article that I read, which was the 16 things that you've learned as a lawyer. I'm sure you've learned a hell of a lot more than that, but it's catchy, 16 things. And in the 25 or half-hour show, we can do about 2 minutes on each one. So I'm going to read the 16 things that you wrote, and if you could just tell me what each one of these things means briefly, and why it made it to the Mace Greenfield top 16 list. The first one is most fathers are excellent parents. And I like that that's number one, by the way, because a lot of people forget that fathers can be, and most cases are, excellent parents if given the opportunity.
Because there's a societal prejudice out there that because a father is not the mother, they can't know how to parent and truly nurture and guide and love and protect everything else a child. And it's absolutely wrong and false.
Next one is not all mothers are good mothers.
It's very true, too. A father hurts or kills a kid, it's front cover news. Mom hurts or kills a kid, it's buried deeper in the newspaper. But strangely, statistics from the federal government, moms are more apt to hurt their own children, and dads are more apt to hurt someone else's children.
I also think that from what a lot of cases you read, the mothers don't do it as physically as a father will. A father may, you'll see that they beat the child, but a lot of times you read of mothers drugging the children or neglecting the child.
You are absolutely wrong.
That's why you're the lawyer.
You're absolutely wrong. Mothers drowning their children in the bathtub, locking them in the car and putting the car in the lake, scalding them with burning hot water, hitting them with a switch. It's not just the football player who did it.
Right.
Hitting them with a belt. There's not a thing, shaking them in brain trauma. There is nothing that a dad has done to a kid that moms haven't done too.
So when I see...
But society thinks otherwise.
Well, and I think on Long Island, because that's what we're talking about, when CPS, Child Protective Services, gets called in, a lot of times they are called on the mother in a case. From what I've seen, they very, very rarely will find the mother guilty, or they call it indicated of child abuse, where a father, for just nothing, ridiculous things, constantly gets indicated for child abuse. They don't remove the child, but they indicate it. It's part of the system, and then it gets used against them for custody.
You're absolutely correct, but there's also the aspect that moms are going to usually much nicer to the CPS people, and the dad
can relate probably too.
And the dad cops an attitude. Who are you to question me about my kid? And then we go, back to the whole concept of image and presentation.
Right. Well, let me ask you, people are watching the show, and many, many parents who've probably Googled this show, father's rights, father's custody, they're gonna say, man, I just got CPS called on me. And I had the same issue myself. Is it good to bring an attorney with you? Because that is an issue. When somebody's accusing you of child abuse, especially when you didn't do it, you're going to be damn pissed off. You can't help it. But if you bring a lawyer in, the perception is the guy's going to hide something, and his lawyer is there to protect him.
Exactly.
What is the answer? Or the client.
What I think is best is, you got to calm down, get control of yourself. Otherwise, you appear everything like the accuser says, and you got to just treat the CPS person like you would anyone else. You catch more flies with honey than vinegar. Be nice to them. Be friendly with them. Just say, listen, if I seem annoyed at all, I apologize. I'm just really upset. I was accused of something that I never did.
So would you bring an attorney in? But would you suggest bringing an attorney in?
I would not necessarily suggest it.
Okay.
Because there are some CPS caseworkers that won't meet with you if you have a lawyer. And again, to me, it's not an aspect of the legal thing of, you should always bring a lawyer.
Right.
It's more of the image, the wrong image you could be given, as you said before. What are you hiding?
Right.
But it's, you can always wear a wire.
Right.
And
I personally suggest that. I don't know if you do. I tell people with CPS wear a wire.
I suggest it because I did have one case where the CPS report said dad admitted to drinking very heavy while he has the children, but yet the recording said otherwise as to what he did and didn't say. And I wanted to go to trial on that one to put the CPS worker on the stand and seek perjury.
Right.
But
I know
that-
for a fact I
that
had
case
one do it to me.
resolved very quickly.
Right, it absolutely does.
You'd
do
be
it.
nice. You'd be friends with the person, because if they like you, their discretion is going to be more in your favor.
Well, we're using up our 2 minutes, but because this is an important issue because it does happen to a lot of people when they come in. What about I've been told that you don't have to speak to a CPS worker, and if they can't prove something, you won't be indicated. Is that true? And do you ever say, you know what? Don't talk to the CPS worker. You didn't do anything wrong.
I got to tell you that is true. However, without giving your side of the story, they only have the other side of the story, and if the other side of the story is your spouse, who you're going through a bad divorce with, that's not so good.
Okay.
So when you meet with them, and I've had cases where the report said, that parent X said all this stuff about parent Y, and parent Y said this and that, and we tend to believe parent Y, not parent X, for the
So it's
following
not court.
reasons.
It's not really a preponderance of the evidence. It seems to me like they're just untrained.
Well, for the
social
reports
workers.
indicated, it's just 51% more likely to have happened than not, and you're indicated.
But that indicated will kill you in a custody battle.
It could, but not necessarily. But you can also then file for a fair hearing to look to get rid of it.
But it takes over a year sometimes. In the
Yeah.
meantime, you're killed, and once you go down that road, you're
Not
you're
if you
out.
got a good forensic that then brings everything out and shows that it's BS.
Okay, moving on. Men are also victims of domestic abuse.
It's very true. There was I can't remember the name of the two social workers that are pretty much known as the Bible writers for social work, Strauss and Gels, I think. And their studies showed that 50% of all domestic violence is either parent hitting the other parent first on any given day, and about 25% of the time is a woman hitting the man never hitting back. 25% of the time is the classic man hits woman. The big difference and problem, though, is a woman is 7 times more likely to need medical attention and care
Right.
when hit by a man than a man is when hit by a woman.
Right.
But you know what? You don't want to be hit, don't hit.
Right.
Because there are too many women think it's okay for them to hit a man and a man can't hit them. But the most self-controlled man, smacked enough times, is going to lose
Right,
it
the snap.
and just without thought, smack back. So you don't want to get hit, don't hit. Best advice I can give.
I also think though the problem in the context of a divorce is, like you said, people eventually they're going to hit back, and a lot of times it does happen in divorce that a woman will antagonize the guy, poking in their face or throwing something at them. The guy finally snaps and pushes them. That's it. The police are called. They have a bruise on my arm,
Yeah.
and that guy is done.
Get a nanny cam. Don't tell your spouse there are nanny cams in the house. Check with a criminal attorney for the right way to do it so you didn't violate any crimes. Wear a wire. So that way when you get arrested, you tell no one about it. But push comes to shove. Now you got to, through the internet, you're downloading the videos showing that, the other spouse was all over you and you got the audio.
So something that could have been bad gets turned into something that could really save you.
Turn the tables,
Because
yeah.
they have a bargaining chip.
Well, not a bargaining chip. Now you want the other one arrested.
Right.
You want to be released.
I think it's a little
'cause
harder
you
to
did
get
nothing.
the woman arrested than it is the father, though.
Yes and no. Done right. I've gotten 3-year OPs for dads against the mom.
Right.
Where, but the evidence was, set forth right out there. There was no second guessing it.
Right, right. Black and
Where the
white.
woman will get the OP against a dad, even though you could second guess it, you got to have it pretty clear cut to go the other way. But I've gotten it done because clients have listened to me on how to do it. So when the woman got mad and, whacked him with a pan, he ran in the bathroom, locked the door, dialed 911. I'm scared. I'm not coming out till you get here. The cops see the bruise on his face, the cuts on his arm.
And have like you said, if you
And
have
if
a
they
nanny
got the
cam,
nanny
that's the
cam,
best.
they got
And
the-
you have a recording, that's also.
I had one that forgot about the cameras. He came home. The house was spray painted. Him and his estranged wife had cross orders of protection. The cops were there enough times. They said, "Let's look at the video surveillance." Well, his estranged wife got locked up that night.
Wow. The next thing is women abuse children as much or more than men do.
Historically, yes, because during the short time span of traditional family, which is only like the end of World War II to the 70s, the women were home more with the kids. There was greater opportunity, and they were abusing the kids more than the men. The men weren't home to do it. So again, statistically, a man is more apt to abuse a stepchild than their biological child, and a mother is more apt to abuse a biological child than a stepchild.
But the fact is, it happens. And
But it happens.
It does happen.
It does happen.
The next one, I'm going to read this one. If the right thing always happened, there'd be no need for lawyers, and there'd be no appellate courts. However, even with lawyers and appellate courts, the right thing doesn't always happen.
This is very true because, again, it's appearances, image, and presentation, long before facts and substance are considered. But usually you don't have eyewitnesses, you don't have recordings, you don't have documents proving one way or the other. So it's like a father in a kitchen making lunch with the kids in a TV room, screaming and yelling. He storms in. One freaks out trying to tell the story. He says in the corner. And one of the calm ones explains it in lies, and you always believe the calm one.
Right.
Okay, and it's always said it's a red flag when you deny too much or you defend it too much.
Right.
That you must be guilty. That if you get too upset by it, you must be guilty. And they're really not the red flags correctly interpreted, because when you're wrongly accused, when we were kids, and you were picked on, and what happened, and the other kids are lying that you did it, it's upsetting, and you freak out.
Of course.
So too often you get decisions because it's tough to prove facts.
Right.
And it's a matter of what you can prove, not what you have to say, what you can prove.
Which is very hard to prove.
Which is very hard to
unless
prove.
you do what you said, which was recordings and any.
Bingo. So you got a judge who's the father in the kitchen making the sandwiches, has no clue, but usually believes the one that seems calmer and presents things more cogently.
Right.
Okay, and more control of themselves, and then, but in reality, it's wrong.
Well, from what I've seen in the courts, what they do is, if they don't know, they just side with the woman because it's acceptable that the father is the bad guy. Nobody really gets upset.
I've seen that happen too.
I mean, they don't get upset. A guy loses custody. It happens every day of the week. A woman loses custody. The women's rights groups go nuts.
Bingo. I've seen that too. And also, just because the lawyer is a judge doesn't mean they know the law that well. Judges are like any other profession. You have the good, the bad, and the in-between. And some of them just don't get it right. But you go to the appellate court, and there are times that, again, the appellate court is limited to the record made in the trial court.
Right.
So if a lawyer didn't create the record necessary, well, that litigant is screwed. But even sometimes with the record being complete, the facts aren't so clear, or sometimes I've read it where it took so long for the appeal, they're not going to, cause greater stress to the children by undoing and changing things now. After over this much time, the children got comfortable with it. So even though the trial court got it wrong, it's in the best interest of the kids to leave it alone.
Right.
So, but there are times even the appellate court gets it wrong. That's why there's then, you got the appellate division and then the Court of Appeals.
I think
and
the
then
appellate division gets it wrong a lot too.
The Court of Appeals makes a decision, but 20, 30 years later they reverse themselves.
Right.
So, if you go into court thinking, the right thing is going to happen, you're a dreamer who's going to have your bubble burst.
Right. The next thing you say is, without the right appearance and presentation, your case won't be heard. Now, you're talking appearance, physical appearance, or are you talking your appearance of your papers, not to vent emotional stories, strictly do facts?
All of it.
Okay.
All of it. Whether you're a man or a woman, you go to court dressed like you're showing up for a Fortune 500 Board of Directors meeting. You show the court you respect yourself and the court. And if you think the court didn't treat you right, showing up like that, imagine how much worse they would have treated you. You keep your mouth shut if it's not your turn to talk. You keep self-control of yourself. You hear things you don't like. You look at your feet remorsefully. And if there's a table, make believe it's glass. Look at your feet remorsefully. None of this shaking your head, pointing, gestures, mouthing lies. Complete control of yourself. Make sure your fingernail grease is out from your fingernails. Make sure your hair is neat. It doesn't have to be short, but it does have to be neat.
I see so many people going to court dressed like a slob, and I said, why doesn't their attorney tell them? And I said, maybe they're trying to show that they have no money?
But everybody has a freaking suit for church, a wedding, a bar mitzvah.
Right.
Give it a rest. Show the court that you're entering their house on their terms.
Right.
Okay, and your papers need to be right, and don't vent emotion. Because when you vent emotion, you're taking the court's attention away from those specific facts that meet the element of the law for the court to give you what you're asking it for.
Right. The next one you say is going through a divorce can be brutal. God knows that's a true statement. Take care of yourself physically, emotionally, and health-wise. Get yourself a support group, therapist. Talk about that.
Exactly. When you go through the divorce, it's so straining on you, it's even more important then, but you should be doing it all the time anyway. You want to make sure you're exercising regularly because it really helps help you can deal with and control your stress, your nervousness. It really helps keep your emotions and psychology healthier besides your body. But it also needs to be given proper fuel. You need proper diet, proper foods, proper nutrition, take vitamins and supplements, and you need consistent wake sleep. As a matter of fact, regular exercise, good nutrition and consistent sleep has been shown to be effective against depression as good as most of the medications.
But you bring up depression's a big issue because what happens is you're going through the divorce, you get depressed. Now the depression's used against you, and that depresses you even more.
Bingo. But half the people of this world are suffering depression. So dealt with properly, it's not going to hurt you. So yes, get a therapist. Show that, yes, the divorce caused me depression, but I am addressing it with a treating therapist, taking the medications that I was told to take, and join a support group. Because even if there comes a point where your own mother doesn't want to hear you vent anymore, and you don't stop venting, you're venting in court, the judge doesn't want to hear it, the judge shuts off his ears to you, so all your facts that are good, he or she doesn't hear anymore. Take the emotion out of it.
That's easier said than done.
I know that, but I've lived through this more than once. I went through 2 divorces. I went through pre-divorce, post-divorce family court. I went through a full custody trial. I also had a lawyer that kicked me hard under the table anytime emotion started to get the better of me. If I take my shoe and sock off now, you'll see where the bone's healed mangled. Just kidding, but you got the idea.
Right.
And I learned a lot from my lawyer in controlling the way she controlled me in the way I now control my clients.
Right. You say too many lawyers will litigate bitter emotions. Don't litigate bitter emotions. Always tell the truth. But people want to litigate this, and lawyers are more than happy to let it happen.
Yeah, because you make more money. When you litigate bitter emotions, it has nothing to do with the elements of the law that gets you the relief you seek. It causes your legal bill to jack up higher and higher, your emotional and psychological scars to get worse and worse and worse, and the whole case to take that much longer. And you know who gets hurt the most that it pours over on top, and no matter how much you think you're protecting them from it? The kids.
Right. The next one, actually, it was not my list because it was my list. It would be moved a little bit towards the top. But despite what many women's groups say, joint legal custody works best for ex-spouses and their children. They only point to the examples of where it doesn't work out. They don't point to the many that it does work out, even in the U.S. where people do it. But in Scandinavia, where there is a presumption of shared parenting, it really works well. They almost eliminated the family courts because it's like a black letter on you that you're going to family court. Why? It's insulting for the woman in other countries that they're saying I need to be taken care of by the rest of my life, and I can't work and I can't get a job.
As the father of a daughter, I am offended by women who say, I need a man to take care of me. I raised my daughter to stand on her own 2 feet. The only thing that a guy can do that she can't is piss standing up without making a mess. I raised my daughter to know that she never needs to depend on a man and she can do it on her own. And where she is in life today at 27, far better than a lot of men, twice her age.
Right.
God bless her, I'm so proud.
Right.
But the key is when the family was intact, usually one parent did more of the parenting and decision making than the other. And they'd talk about it over dinner, and the other one would say, yeah, sounds good, yeah, great job. You know, you do that's wonderful, you know. But as soon as there's a divorce, they want to cut the other one out. I want sole custody or decision making. You know what? And they start doing other things that makes the other parent feel like they're going to get cut out of the kid's life. So where they would have consented to your having custody, now they're forced to fight for custody or risk being cut out.
Right.
And that's why I tell all my clients, except for when there is serious aberrations why you can't, that you do everything you go to do with the kids, talk to the other parent. And if you guys can't talk, email them, and email is best when you can't talk because it's easier to print out than a text message. You know, and tell them, hey, hypothetically, the pediatrician died. Need a new one as long as it's within X miles of the house and takes the insurance. Do you want to go pick the new one? Do you want to do it together? Or do you want me to just pick the one and let you know when you go meet the person? Usually with that, the other one says, oh, I trust you. You always did good. But you know what? When you just say, the pediatrician died, this is the new one? Well, how come I didn't get a chance to say something about it? And you feel cut out. So you do it the same way you did it during the marriage of letting the other one know
Right.
They stay in the same role, and you get to make all the decisions that
Everybody's
you
happy.
always did.
Right. The next one is lying happens too often in courts, and the courts don't punish it.
That to me is horrendous. I've caught lawyers lying. I've caught litigants lying. And the courts, they won't refer it for perjury, and if they do, the DAs aren't prosecuting it.
Grandparents have legal visitation rights in New York as long as they had a relationship before. And this is important because I know you represent a lot of grandparents. They don't necessarily realize a lot of cases of parental alienation. I would say most cases, once one parent is cut out, most of the times, not all the times, it's the father, and that carries on to the grandparents, the cousins, the nieces, and it's just really, really tragic and sad for the kid. What can a grandparent do quickly, because we're running out of time?
They can petition for grandparent visitation.
And is this real, or is this on books, but it's not really?
No, it's real, because their time to see the kids is when their child, who's one of the parents, has the kids. That's when they would see it. But if that parent has passed away and they won't, or is not allowed to see the kids, or is being alienated, they can look to have their own visitation if they had a prior established relationship.
Well, what if the one is alienated and the kid says, I don't want to go see the father or the mother, but and then
But you can do
then?
it. You can do it where the grandparents have visitation. In the
They
order
can
it
get-
says that their offspring, the other parent, is not to be around, and if that's violated, then they lose their visitation.
In situations where the non-custodial parent enjoys a good, unfettered relationship with their children and is never badmouthed by the custodial parent, child support is most likely to be kept current and paid timely. And from my experience, when people work on an agreement and the judge doesn't order it, and it's done either through mediation or just sitting down with a lawyer, those cases, if it's an amount that people can live with, then they'll pay it. From my scene, they don't pay it is when the people say deadbeat dad, deadbeat dad. That's nonsense.
But
People have to live.
I've also seen where dads have agreed to pay things that are over and above, that their lawyer said just agree to it without
Absolutely.
being told it's over and above, and thinking this is what a judge would order when it isn't, and it's more they can afford.
Yeah, and I hope you tell
But that's
people
bad
that
lawyering.
because that happens all too often. They'll get them to the end and they'll say, "Just sign this because you're gonna have to pay it anyway." But now that you've agreed to it, it's very hard to change because they say, "Well, you agreed to it."
Except a lot of those have defects in it. I'm able to get them vacated.
Okay,
Not
good.
always.
When dividing assets in New York State, everybody says, "Who cares? We're getting divorced. It's equitable distribution. It's 50-50." You say that's not necessarily
That's not
true.
necessarily true. And I'm going to give you just a couple of short examples.
Very short examples.
Yeah. Long-term marriage over 20 years, the court's basically going to just cut everything in half. Short-term marriage, without a short-term childless marriage of 3 years, you can set it up to be more of what you put in, you're going to get out.
Okay.
So it depends on the length.
Settlements between the parties are always the best and more often complied with than court orders.
Absolutely.
When you say settlements, what do you do?
Two people agree to it, and it's actually fair and equitable, and they had the proper legal representation, so they knew if it's more than the law would require or not.
But if you both have a lawyer, aren't they going to make you fight?
Not always. Many lawyers
can you
don't.
use the same lawyer?
Technically, pursuant to, I think it's Levine versus Levine, 1982 Court of Appeals, you can use one lawyer for that situation
You don't
as long as
sound
you're
like
both
you're,
advised. I used to do it, and then I got cautioned or censured or something like that because a judge who had a bug up his butt about me, because when I was on radio and I wasn't a lawyer, yet he wasn't a judge, yet I used to make fun of him a lot, referred me for having done this.
What about mediation?
Mediation, if two people want to amicably resolve it, it's the best thing. But like everything else, there are good and bad mediators.
Mace Greenfield, thank you very much. I
Gary,
appreciate
thank
a lot
you.
of great advice there. And if anybody wants to reach Mace Greenfield, you can go to his website right on the bottom of the screen. Thank you, Mace.
Thank you, Gary.
Well, hello. How are you? What are you doing? We haven't spoken much lately. Is everything okay? Are you sure? You seem angry. We should get together and make a list of all the things that may be bothering you. Why don't we meet downstairs in the kitchen and work on that list?
I'll be right down, Dad.
It's springtime in the forest of the black-tailed deer. The young male is feeling playful. It's time for tag. The female flicks her ears. Her way of saying, "Catch me if you can."
All over America, people are taking the National Radon Test. Have you?
You put me on the spot.
Have you heard of radon?
I never thought about it. I don't know.
I think it's a secret killer or a silent killer.
Poison gas that seeps into the house.
It's one of the tests we did with the inspector before buying the home.
Why worry about it?
Why worry? Take the National Radon Test. True or false? Radon is the second leading cause of lung cancer.
True. I'd say false.
No, it's true.
I thought of cigarettes and then pollution.
That's something new to me.
Radon can penetrate a concrete block.
It's false.
False?
False?
It's true.
I wouldn't know how they could protect you from that.
It's scary.
The Office of the Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested for radon.
False?
It's true.
True?
I should know about it because I worked in the hospital for many years.
So that's bad. We should get our house tested.
Sure, I'm gonna call it.
1-800-SOS-RADON. How can you not call?
1-800-SOS-RADON.
R-A-D-O-N.
You'd never know it on the battlefield, but nearly half of today's military are National Guard and reservists. However, they can't answer our nation's call without their employer's support. If you're an employer, visit Esq.Org and find out how to do your part. After all, their response depends on yours.
One day these rats were playing in the woods. Wanted some matches and that's no good. Listen to smoke before you give it a try.
Only you.
Don't play with matches. Don't play with fire. Cause there's nothing very funny about ripped off life. Nothing very nice on a homeless mind. So if a gorgeous force is what you desire, don't play with matches. Don't play with fire.
Only you can prevent wildfire.